The first thing you need to learn how to shoot is, I say, an air gun. This is a Beeman R1 in 20 caliber. I've had it for quite a number of years. This is one that I got when Beeman was owned by Americans, and I believe this is an imported rifle from Germany. It's got a Beeman scope on it. Now, unfortunately, Beeman was bought by the Chinese and their guns are shit. So I don't recommend buying a modern Beeman air rifle made in China. But if you can find the ones that were made 20 and 30 years ago, even maybe 15 years ago, I don't know when they sold. There was a friend of mine named, I think his last name was Wallace. Please forgive me if you're listening and I can't remember your first name, but he was really good to me and helped me acquire a lot of air guns at Beeman. So I have a fond spot in my heart for them. They helped me a lot. The cool thing, like I mentioned the other day, about an air gun is you can learn to shoot all the bases with this air gun. I started out when I was, 12 years old with a Remington bolt action 22, and I shot a lot of jackrabbits and stuff with that. But what really helped me was when I got a Sheridan 5mm Blue Streak pump air gun. I shot that thing 30 to 60, maybe even 100 times a day. Every day I shot that thing. I had a fig tree in my yard, and I had about 20 yards about distance. I put a little fig up on a stake, and I would shoot those figs again and again and again and again. And it was a very inexpensive way to practice. I couldn't afford, as a kid, to buy very many 22 shells. Hey, my parents were poor. When I was 13 years old, no one knows this, my dad got a brain tumor, and he lived probably the longest anybody's lived with that type of tumor, but we had no money for 6.5 years. I grew up poor. Everything I got, I had to get for myself. My parents couldn't help me. So I had to make do with the resources I had. If you're a freedom-loving country, and a freedom-loving community, a freedom-loving person, and you want to learn how to shoot and you have no budget, you can save up and buy a good air rifle. I know you can do that because even I could do it. You can afford to buy pellets. And I'm going to show you today how to start training. I'm going to get about 3 big steps away. Let's start it. Move that table back. 1, 2, 3, and a bit. I'm starting out with this classic bullseye target with a green bullseye that everyone can see. It's just cardboard on wooden stakes, very cheap and easy to make. You could do this in your backyard. You could actually do this in your apartment. You can learn in almost any environment what I'm teaching you right now. I broke the air gun open, which cocked it. I'm inserting my pellet. I'm seating it nicely. I'm shutting it. Now, you hold the gun. Your right hand is your strong side. Hold your gun by your side like that. Muzzle in front of you. Step forward on your left leg. Okay? Flex your knees just a tiny bit. Raise the gun up. Your right hand here is going to go on the wrist of the stock. Your left hand is going to go up here on the forearm. You're going to raise the gun up your shoulder like this. See this? Camera coming around in front of me. You're going to press it into this crease right here. Right into your shoulder there. Not on your collarbone over here. A lot of people do that with shotguns and they wonder now why that 12 gauge hurts so bad. Or they put it on their bicep here and shoot it like that. That's not where I want you to put the gun. Where you put the butt's important. You're going to put it in your shoulder, into that crease, and snug it in there. You're going to bring the gun up to your face. Not your face down to the gun up to your face. You're going to look at that target and you're going to go bang. There at this range, I shot about 1.25 inches low. There we go. I raised the gun up. I got a good grip on my shoulder. Now some people don't like your elbow up. Your elbow up like this. See how my elbow's canted up? That holds that butt into that pocket really good. But it also makes you a bigger profile. So some people say in combat shooting, you don't raise your elbow. I'm undecided. It gives you a lot more stability. I think it allows you to shoot more accurately. They would teach you to keep your elbow down like this in here and shoot. And there, I aimed right about here. So I'm still shooting a little low at this range. This is what the gun's sighted in for. So I'll come up the next time that way. Now I have a nice beam and scope on this gun. And you can buy a lot of air guns that already come with the scopes right from the factory. You can get them with iron sights. Usually it's like a U-shaped piece of sheet metal. It has a slot between two posts. You put the front sight. We're going to show that on your screen so you can see what a sight picture looks like for iron sights, and we're going to show you what a telescopic sights look like. So I'm going to put the crosshair a little bit higher this time. Went low again. Now some people might teach you to lean in as you shoot a little bit. If it's a light recoiling gun, that can help with stability a little bit and help with muzzle rise and recovery. But I'm used to shooting very heavy rifles, and when you lean into it, you magnify the recoil tremendously. So I tend to shoot more upright than by leaning. There we go. Now I'm not being very particular right now about my shooting. All I'm illustrating is that you can use an air gun in very tight spots, very small spaces, to learn how to shoot. Now I'm hitting consistently right here. So I figured out a little bit where to hold, and the last few shots are going almost into one hole. So you're going to learn to do that too. Like I said, this gun is sighted in for a greater distance, and I'm having to adjust a little bit, but that's fine. The next target I want you to get is one of these. Now look at, you don't need to buy these things. You can just take a piece of paper and trace a silhouette on it. But this represents a person. What's nice about it, I know I'm a wide load, but I think I cover up most of that target, don't I? Yes. Might be a little taller than I am. I am vertically challenged. And this is the way I teach women to shoot a pistol. In fact, we start out here. And I'll be teaching that again, maybe at some other point. But one of the reasons I start out so close, and why I suggest you to too, when you're training someone unfamiliar with firearms, there's two things that bother them a lot. The first one is the noise and the muzzle blast. God didn't make us to have explosions go off in our hands. You have to learn to deal with that type of shock to your nervous system. It's not natural. We're born with tolerance for that. You have to learn to get tolerance for it. We're not used to our arms moving or the gun coming back into our shoulder. You know, some people complain about the recoil. They can't shoot even a 308 or a 300 Win Mag. Yes, you can, but you're going to have to give up your soft, happy little life where you don't take any bumps or bruises or any impacts. You'll get used to it because I've taught lots of even slight women how to shoot a 300 Win Mag. So if they can do it, you can do it. So getting back here, the other thing is they're afraid that they can't hit anything. I can't do that because somewhere, sometimes in their life, somebody has tried to teach them to shoot, and they gave them a 2-inch 38 special at 20 yards. They didn't give any instruction and said, blast away. And the gun's recoil, the noise, and the fact they couldn't hit anything discouraged them. In contrast, if you start out with your crew that you're teaching, let's say I'm in Taiwan, and I'm teaching a bunch of high school kids how to shoot. They're going to start right here. And we're going to load the gun like I showed you. We're going to lift it to our shoulder. We're going to tuck it in tight. We're going to look at that sight. I'm going to press the trigger. Again, I shot low because this gun shoots low at that range. Now here's what's going to happen. The first time that high school kid in Taiwan shoots that air rifle, hits that silhouette target in the X ring with the very first shot, you're going to see a smile on their face. Their confidence is going to go through the roof, and they're going to go, yeah, I can do that. Let's see if I can't shoot it right in the X. I'll have to use some Kentucky elevation. There we go. I use a little Kentucky elevation. You come in here, and I punch the exact center of the X. Okay? So, you have them fire 6, 10 rounds. At first, they're not going to be used to squeezing the trigger. They're not going to be used to holding the gun up. This thing weighs about 8.5 pounds, maybe 9 pounds with the scope on. That's not that light. But the heavier the gun, the steadier you can hold it. So, they may shoot this. They may shoot even that. That's all good, because you know what? At 10 yards, they could take out some Chinese stormtrooper. They come in through the door, they're standing there with their rifle in the corner, or standing up on top, high on top of a table, or a stepladder in the corner. They burst in the room, bang! By the time they adjust their eyes, look up to find them, 10 yards or 10 feet away, some 16-year-old just clocked them with a bolt-action 8mm German Mauser built in 1914. Okay? You don't always need the best state-of-the-art arms. Yeah, you might get one or two and get killed. But I've always told you that when you fight a huge invader, heavily armed, with all the modern assets of warfare that they could have, and you use low tech, you're going to pay in lives, just like in Afghanistan. Those people over there fought the US government, fought the Russians for years and years and years with bolt-action infield 303s, and killed us at 300, 400, 500, 600 yards. So don't tell me it can't be done. It can be done, but you may die doing it. It's easy, I know it's easy for me to sit here and tell you about somebody else dying, and I also have to be prepared to die. But I'm a little closer to the grave than I am the cradle now. I've got to do a whole lot of stuff. God's blessed me tremendously, and I know if I die, I'm going to go immediately to heaven. So the fear of dying isn't overpowering for me anymore. I'm willing to go, but when I go to Jesus, I'm going to take a whole lot of people with me. So now I'm back here at the 20-yard range, and it's the basics all over again. At this range, I took off my safety glasses because there's literally no chance of that pellet bouncing back and hitting me here. Up close, you don't need ear protection, but you do need eye protection, and safety glasses are dirt cheap, and they should be worn all the time you're shooting whenever possible. You may not always have them on in combat or in a hunting situation, but when you can, put them on. That one's in there. Yeah. So I had a few low shots there at 20 yards, and then I started making my adjustment, and then I started cracking it here in the X-ring again. So, like I said earlier, this gun isn't really sighted in for this range, and I have lots of excuses, okay? We all have excuses for missing. The main thing is that if you start shooting at 10 yards, 5 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, I can teach anybody to take a 308 or a 300 Win Mag or a 223. Within one day, I'll have them hitting this X ring at 30 yards, offhand, guaranteed. From there, because you're shooting air gun, you might not have access like I do to 200 and 300 and 400 yard shots. You don't have the room. So if you have limited room, the way you compensate for the lack of room and the lack of a long range is you shoot at smaller and smaller targets. Here's some old beat up targets here. I need to paint out. They've been sitting out in the rain recently, so they rusted. But I've shot these a bunch. I've got more downrange over here against that berm. Some of them are painted green. Can you zoom in on those? Yes. Zoom in tight on them. Now, I shoot those a lot more than this one. This one here's been kind of neglected. I shoot those every week with 22s. Usually about 35 yards to 50 yards. The smallest one is only about 1.5 inches across. I shoot them with iron sights and I shoot them with telescopic sights. And that's the way you compensate with an air gun range that you don't have a lot of room at. You make the size of the target smaller and smaller. So if you want to duplicate shooting at 50 yards with a rifle, then your shots should be right in this 10 ring, right in here, okay? If you can hold those consistently at your furthest range, you'll be hitting somebody at 50 yards easily, okay? Now remember, you should always be striving for a group like this, because in combat, under the stress of combat, it's my belief, it's been my experience that most people, unless you're enormously well trained and you have vast experience shooting and killing stuff, that the stress of combat will make your group grow, the size of your group, 3 times what you can shoot in practice. So if you can shoot 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches group in practice, at 50 to 100 yards, you could shoot a 3-inch group, or 3.5-inch group, a 4-inch group. That means also that at 200 and 300 yards with very little practice, you'll be hitting this. And with a 300 Win Mag, a 308, and even a good 223, any hit in this 7 ring may very well be lethal. I'm telling you what, they're sure not going to feel like shooting back. And all that can be accomplished. You can learn how to do all that, even without hardly any ammunition expended in a battle rifle or a bolt action rifle in 223 or 308 or 300 Win Mag, with very few rounds being fired. If you shoot this air gun, which is very inexpensive, consistently, a lot, and shoot the other guns because lack of budget or room or time, you shoot more sparingly, you'll still be very, very effective out to astounding distances for relatively little and inexpensive training. Mark my words, it works. I encourage you to try it.